so where you're standing, you're like, I can't believe somebody would do this. But if you go back hundreds of years, like everybody was doing that. Like it was actually crazy that we were even thinking about not doing it.
Yeah.
So it's like
the fact that you're now wearing a suit is crazy.
You know what I mean? Like, whoa, like you said, if they came and saw how we dress now, they would be like, are you fucking insane? You know,
they would literally scream like, well, look at that's pornography. Like, you know, like just exposed midriffs and, you know, leggings. Jesus Christ. Can you imagine if somebody walked by Thomas Jefferson with a dump truck ass and some leggings?
No, dude, just double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
Welcome back to another episode of Three Averagely Intelligent Dudes. Today, we're discussing a pretty dangerous idea, the formation, our part 3 of a new government.
A very exciting time.
We had part 1 and 2.
We bring it the new.
We're going to bring in the new, as they say in ancient Atlantis. To my left, Rod, you came up with a great idea in part 1. You talked about the app, some blockchain voting. We had some good ideas.
Yeah.
You know, we talked it out. Go check out part 1 for that. Part 2, my friend Mac over here talks about the bottom-up government, as I call it. It was a spicy episode. We talked a little bit about ethno-states. We talked a lot about personal liberties prescribed to us or given to us in the Constitution or in the Bill of Rights or in the Declaration of Independence. And we kind of looked at it from a different perspective, which is kind of like, I'm not going to set that up. They can set that up themselves. I hope I'm not mischaracterizing you with that.
That's pretty much it.
Okay, so now we're in part 3. We're going to call this Neo-Internetalism, John Allen's Journey to Communist Socialist Paradise. I want to start out with just, I wrote down some facts about what was going on when we wrote the Constitution and where we were as a country. Now, I don't think that we should live in the past, and that's kind of going to be my general overall theme of the Neo-Internetalism, is that we need to move past 1786 into 2022. That's kind of my overall theme. Because in 1787, America had a population of 4 million people in 13 colonies. Today, we have about 333 million in over 50 states and districts and territories and colonized countries or whatever you want to call it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Back in 1787, 1/5 of our population was held in slavery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Currently, and I wanted to find something analogous here, you know, to the 1/5 of people in slavery, being that slaves weren't allowed to vote and were, you know, just obviously terrible conditions. 1 out of every 50 people in America is an illegal immigrant.
Right now. That's amazing.
1 out of 50. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And it's not just from like one country. That's from the world.
The world.
Yeah.
Undocumented.
Yep.
Okay. And that was, you know, it took me a little bit of math to get that number, but I feel pretty comfortable with that. Back in 1787, 90% of the colonists were farmers, averaging anywhere from 30 acres to 1,000 plus acres.
90%.
90% of the people who were going to be allowed to vote, because if you remember at this time, just white men who own land.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So nobody was making OnlyFans money back then, huh?
No,
Wow.
that was not even 1%.
Well, I mean, that depends on how you define
I mean, if
OnlyFans
you're
money,
talking about
because technically the oldest profession on earth, they were out there getting their money.
There were prostitutes in 1787. I don't have the stats on those currently.
Yeah, that's the other 10%.
I would not call them prostitutes on OnlyFans.
But prostitutes and people on OnlyFans in 1787 didn't have property.
They are. I mean, they are.
They didn't have property. That's kind of where I'm getting at. It's property owners.
And I was just making the point that there was a very, like, you got to understand when you say 90%
we're
farmers.
Consolidated in farming.
You know, like nowadays, your job could be all, like, people don't even have job titles anymore. It's like, what do you do? It's like, I'm a visionary.
Yeah, I'm a freelance thinker.
Yeah, you know, so we don't really, I mean, like, shit, people ask me all the time, they're like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm a podcaster, you know?
Oh, I love telling people I'm a podcaster.
Yeah, so,
it's good.
I mean,
it's
that's interesting that the whole country was doing
90% of the colonists.
Yep.
In 2022, 1% of U.S. workers are designated as farmers.
Wow.
That's crazy. 1% of the people create enough food to have like a 20% surplus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We also ship
manufacturing
in
is a crazy.
so much food.
Yeah. Not only do we create a surplus of food for ourselves here, but we ship in all the crazy exotic shit from all over the world.
Yeah.
So I bet you if you took the overall numbers of like what percentage of the world is farming, we probably just sent a lot of it to other countries.
Yeah.
South America,
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where like every banana comes from.
Yeah. So in 1787, this surprised me. We had the healthiest people and the highest standard of living in the world.
Here in America.
Right here in the 13
Brand
colonies.
new,
Freedom,
only 10 years
high
old.
protein diet, fucking, oh man, it goes on. I went into that hole and I stand by that shit. We were the healthiest people in the world.
And highest standard of living.
And the highest standard of living.
Wasn't it like
because we all had property.
living?
No, we all had we had property.
It wasn't until after we became a country.
We had 13 colonies.
Okay,
and
so
you
we'd
could
settled,
go that way.
We had settled for quite a while now.
Oh, yeah.
At this point.
Established, like New York and Boston are like harbors and shit.
But like
They got brick
Spain
houses.
and France and other countries owned other big chunks of America.
Yeah.
Dutch had a huge chunk of America.
Right.
Germans. So anyways, we had the healthiest people, the highest standard of living. Today, when you look at total quality of life studies, I looked at about 4 or 5 different sources here. I'm not going to give them to you. Fuck you. You don't get my sources.
No, what?
I'm joking. It's an in-joke, I guess.
I was about to say, I was like, later when we're editing, we're going to need those sources.
I'll put them in my fucking Google Doc. God damn it. We are not in the top 10 of any of the quality of life studies.
Yeah.
None of them. We don't crack the top 10.
That's fascinating.
We're like 12th in one of the biggest ones, I think.
What do they measure quality of life?
Tons of stuff. Economic mobility, literacy, stuff like that. In 1787, we had a high literacy in America, 4 times as many newspapers as France. That's a lot of newspapers and a lot of people reading them in America. For 90% of us being farmers, the fact that we had more newspapers in France, I mean, we were bigger, but population-wise, we weren't much bigger. I'm sure France at the time had a similar population. So it just shows like, yeah, we had a high standard of living and we were involved. We were reading newspapers. We learned to read. We taught our kids to read. Anyway. Today, 2022 in America, we have high literacy, but when it comes to newspapers and stuff like that, our mainstream media is very partisan and like homogenous. It's Viacom.
Yeah, it's coming from like 3 people.
Yeah, it's
tops.
like 1 or 2 major companies own all the distribution of information.
I can't think of that dude's name right now. But
Rupert Murdoch, the Australian that owns like Fox.
No, I was thinking about the other guys from CNN and the other side.
Yeah, George Soros.
Yeah, there you go.
Any of these like big boogeyman names.
Yeah, they own it all.
Yeah, it's essentially like our information is much more like when we used to have 4 times as many newspapers as France, you had a little more of the people's voice. Nowadays, it's a little more of the voice of.
Yeah, but did you ever look into what kinds of stories came out of those newspapers from back in the day? Because you talk about it being partisan now, but it's actually terribly partisan in the early formation of the country.
Rather than talking about like
just say anything. Right?
Well, yeah, I guess rather than talking about the information itself, I wanted to show that we as a people were reading and interacting.
This is who I was talking about, the Turner Broadcasting system.
Got you. Yeah.
They own
Ted Turner.
TBS.
Ted Turner, exactly. Yeah, they own everything.
So the last little comparison here I wanted to give you was in 1787 in America, we had no royalty, no titled nobility, and we had ease of upward mobility. If you were a white male, you could move on up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and obviously
get
this
you
is
some more land.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is part of Neo-Internetalism, is that these things look good on paper in 1787, but the amount of repression and subjugation of people was, something that you have to address. Like this document was written while 1/5 of our fucking populace was in slavery and another 2/5 couldn't vote. Anyway, in 2022 in America, still no royalty or titled nobility, but our upward mobility for millennials and Gen Z is unlikely. Anybody born into the millennial or Gen Z category, which starts around 1982, you have a 45% chance to earn more than your parents. Those not good numbers.
Yeah, it's like, flip of a coin.
It's not good numbers.
Not even all the way a flip of a coin.
Because if you look at the numbers for your parents versus their grandparents, they had way more chance of upward mobility. So this is a recent phenomenon that our upward mobility they put the brakes on that shit.
Hey, slow your roll, baby.
They put the fucking brakes on that shit. They say we got enough.
We gotta do an episode one day about why that is. I would be fascinated.
Who knows?
Fascinating.
So this was essentially an exercise just to kind of get us to where we look at, okay, what was life then? What is life now? Why are we looking at a paper document from 1787 that we rarely, if ever, change, with minimal amount of amendments? Why are we using that in 2022? We can look at it the same way our founding fathers looked at all these other documents and all these other things and use it as an example. But I'm here for Neo-Internetalism. We have had something happen in the past 25 years that has shook the foundation of our entire existence, and that is the creation of the internet.
Couldn't agree more.
It is so much, and I know people probably thought, well, when the printing press happened, you know what I'm saying? Okay, yeah, printing press happened. You still had to ship a paper across the globe. This is
still could take 3 days for you to get your news. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it could take you a week or months, or you got to come over on a ship.
There's literally an entire holiday built around that for black people in America.
Yeah.
What?
The idea that they didn't know that they were free until
Juneteenth.
Weeks later after it was done.
Yeah, right.
And so the point is not to understate how amazing and technological advancements of the printing press. Not here to argue that. Here to say that 250 years after the creation of America, we need to stop use the printing press and fucking jack into the internet.
It's time to plug in, baby.
It's time to plug in.
Yeah.
So I didn't go back and rewrite our entire Constitution, but I thought of some big overall concepts that we could talk about that I would change with our government. Number one being public works. I think that the idea of public works now is just welfare or social security or Medicaid. It's you go down to this shitty office in town and you get a fucking free dentist or something. It's like, or you go down there and you get your food stamp check. It's this idea of like being on the dole is what our public works really is. Because I'm not talking about constructing roads or, designing our parks. I'm talking about the public works of I am interacting with my environment. In what way can I interact with the public or greater good? And so I want to bring some ideas to you guys and the ideas of public works. How would you feel if there was a bigger, better public transportation system?
I feel
like if our tax money was used to fund a much more robust...
Like a Hyperloop?
I'm not even saying Hyperloop. Maybe it's a mega loop.
I tell you what, if you could get the government to run the buses on schedule, just the same buses, I'd be really happy with that.
He's interested in just that.
I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of room for improvement for what he's talking about. And so, like, I could get behind shit like this. Like, this is where I lean more left than I think a lot of people misunderstand, is that, like, I would love for a lot of this stuff to be done. Like, I want all of the socialist stuff done, but not by my government. Like, I don't trust my government to do that shit right.
Well,
but this is a hypothetical government that would do it right.
And here's a little pushback on that, because our government's kind of already, like, if we, so our bus system in Las Vegas is, like, some private entity is involved.
Yeah.
Somebody, running that app, or, whoever REDRAFT
owns the buses and the whole
there's
routes
probably
and
there's probably a board of directors.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a whole kind of private entity.
We can look it up.
Yeah.
RTC.
Who owns REDRAFT?
And this is
and I saw this in North Carolina when they built an HOV lane. And that HOV lane is run by a public company, and you pay to access it. And you get a little bit of less traffic.
It's a subsidiary of the Regional Transportation Commission of South Nevada. But we knew this already, like when we were talking about PG&E, right? And like them producing, like you think the city provides you electricity, but it's PG&E.
Yeah,
like
and the point I was trying to make, you were essentially saying, like, I wouldn't mind my government running something if my government ran it properly. And currently, this private company is running what I think should be a government entity, and they're running it pretty well. I don't see how the government couldn't emulate or improve upon what these.
So you would like to see like a bus system like the post office is.
Let's go with bus system, and let's make it international. Not international, excuse me. That would be cool. But transcontinental.
Yes, because that's one thing that I do like about this idea. In a sense, like if it was like, okay, you get the same system you have now, but it's just provided by the government. I mean, even Macron was saying, yeah, and expanded would be dope, right? Like seeing it be like this, like just we're making transportation like effortless, and like subway systems are just sick. It's like you could save so much pollution. You can make it so much easier for people who don't have to own this whole, expensive user and they're only getting worse. It's like now the car is electric and whatever.
And it's a great area to show how easily the government could run a program like this and it be state funded or federally funded or accessible to all through a public works for the public good. Because right now we got Greyhound. You got these like these Asian bus lines that run from Charlotte, North Carolina to downtown New York. And they go in record time because they also have like record accidents. They're super dangerous and low quality from all the reviews I've read, because I was going to take a couple. The Greyhounds, I've been on a Greyhound across America before. Really sketch right now.
What are you using as your control for your faith that the government could do this as well or better? Because, like, my question that immediately comes up, and I think it's kind of in the same vein, have you ever been to the DMV?
I have been to perfectly well-run DMVs. I've been into DMVs where...
I've seen very few of those.
Well, I mean, just in my personal experience. I've been to a lot of different ones.
I've moved around. I lived in Texas, LA, here.
Post office?
I've been... What about the post office?
I'm just saying, like, all these examples
exist. The post
exist.
office loses money every year.
Yeah, there's bureaucracies that are bloated. There are systems that are antiquated and flawed. So when I look at this busing system, it's not like, well, let's see if the government can go in and see how long it takes them to fail or how long it takes. Let's publicly fund it. Let's publicly look at this system and try to make it better. Let's put our brains together and find a way for people in America to travel America at an affordable rate.
So I like what you're saying there, in the sense you're saying like you're advocating for a revamping of the system in general, not saying like, oh, I want this system just operated, like this government would also have a intention and a consciousness toward providing quality public works.
It would be like if instead of cabs went to Ubers, it would be like if cabs went to government run car ride shares or something, which, I'm just essentially saying this whole system exists. I think there's a way, and it's a good example of how the government could take part in this capitalistic environment and have their own version of it.
So we would still pay for this?
I think if we had a government run service that could intercontinental travel, and I'm just saying buses because we're using buses as the example.
Sure, but
it could be planes, it could be trains, it could be whatever.
Hyperloops or whatever.
Could be hyperloops.
Whatever, it's just like an efficient transportation system.
Efficient transcontinental transportation that has a government entity within the options. So maybe there's still Greyhound, maybe there's still that risky Asian route, but there's a government option. There's a Medicare for travel. Okay? I want to expand this idea out even further.
So it is free?
No. It would be just like the bus. You'd pay some small fee. Like it would be, something set to where, because that's the thing about a government, right? Is they're supposed to be in a perfect system. They're the ones who are like, all right, this is the hard and fast rule. Okay, this is the bottom. You can't do anything below this. Have fun in the free market. So if there was a way for me to take a government bus and it was comparable or slightly cheaper than a Greyhound, if the Greyhound's offering a better service and bang for my buck, I'm going to take the Greyhound.
Yeah.
But if I'm at my bottom and I got to get across the country and I only got $20, there's an option that only costs $20, like that's kind of the fail safe bottom net option is not necessarily always free.
Yeah. I see what you're saying in the sense of like I might be misinterpreting you because this sounds like something that this sounds like very libertarian-esque, if you will, but like the idea that you want a public option, not just in like the idea of like a Medicare, but you would like that extended to other services like transportation and food and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm going to get into my food one next.
And so basically like there's a city bus that's paid for with like tax money, I'm assuming, that you could take if you're, it's like limited routes or whatever. And it's just like, just to get you from like one area to like the hubs. And then there's like, but then there would be other buses that you could take if you were like, hey, I'm doing good, but or just like you would have more options, and you were
buses,
just saying
cabs, Ubers, like you could move it on to get your own car, rent a car, like it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Like all these industries exist.
If I'm a millionaire, though, would I still be able to get on these public
Of course,
works?
there would not be any. That's kind of the beauty, I think, of taking it out, something like this, out of the hands of a private entity. Because right now, a private entity could say, make some rule to keep you from engaging in this service, whether it be you're unvaccinated, so you can't ride on my private bus because I'm a private company, that's leased by the government of Nevada to run these buses. So I could see a world where that might hold up in court if a private organization doesn't allow me to use its service because of something that they deem. But the thing about a government is, the government comes in and says, "Hey, you can't do that." Right? That's overreach, right? We call that government overreach. But if government has its own part of the system and says, if you want to interact with our part of it, then you need to like show a vaccination card, for example, or something like that. Like, you can. That's tough.
Yeah, vaccine's not a good.
It's not a good example because it's tough. But
I get what you're saying.
I'm just essentially saying that like the things that we will afford ourselves, the rights we will afford ourselves in our Bill of Rights and our Constitution or whatever, will most certainly apply to that public bus.
Right.
Will not apply to the Greyhound because the Greyhound is its own company and makes its own rules.
They reserve the right to refuse service to anyone
for any reason.
For any reason.
Right to work laws or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Whereas if you were to take the public bus and you wanted to say record, hey, it's a public bus. You can record in public areas. As long as you're not breaking any laws.
I've always said this too, like when I thought about how people would be able to interact with like government systems and then private systems in different like thought experiments in a situation like you said, like something that's a private corporation has the right to refuse service to people, but the government one that everybody's taxes pay to, like you're paying into it, so you should be able to act like everybody that pays in.
Show your ID,
access.
you get in. Yeah,
exactly.
Like
so like I like that idea. Like the reason that it gets messed up is because it's about how the government implements it is what's interesting. Because like, let's take the RTC, for example. They're leasing out the services of this city. The city's provided services, they're leasing that, they're contracting that out to a private company. And so like, I'm pretty sure the same rules apply to the company, but the company are part of the decision-making process about the rules of how you can conduct.
I would say they probably ultimately control a lot of those.
Probably, because I mean the government has to do a lot of stuff. So
the other side of that, Nevada, the state of Nevada is your customer, and you have to provide the service that they want. So you know what I mean, like Nevada would lay out the standard of how the busing should go from this company.
Yeah, all I was saying was that the company, the people who are in charge of the daily operations of the company are also in charge, or they're part of the discussion with the state people about
they have
how they're going to run it or whatever.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that the reason that that's not the best system is because once that contract is in place, there is no competition. There is no other bus services that you can take for those routes. You know what I mean? Like there's not like somebody competing on those routes and being like, I run these routes faster than them with cleaner buses. You know, the company doesn't have to compete with anybody else. So their service doesn't really matter because you're the only game in town.
That's true.
And so I think that that's a poor incentive structure. Same thing with like the post office. The post office is a poor incentive structure because they don't let UPS and FedEx compete with them, which is regular postage mail. They can only do packages. Right. And so like if you were, and like you said, the post office loses money all the time because it's a terribly run organization. It has nothing really to do with the fact that it's private or public.
Or even a terrible service.
It just has to do with the fact that it has to do with the fact that it's the only game in town for that service. Which is a monopoly. And so like you can either have a corporate monopoly, which is where like you buy up all the competition and then your corporation is technically the only game in town, or you can have a government monopoly where your government service is the only game in town. But it's still a monopoly.
I would much more like to see like a hybrid of these ideas. And cool. Something that idea I wanted to propose to you that just came to me out of the blue. So let's say you had a public option for your bus transportation, right? But you didn't ever want to use it. you could buy in with your tax return. So when you do your taxes, you could say, yeah, I'll give $10 to the bus system. I'll use it all. I'll get a free pass for the year or something, whatever it is. I think a lot of people would buy into that.
Yep.
I think if you made it cheap enough, but also worthwhile enough for you, it could cover your costs as a quote unquote company, even though at this point it'd be a government entity. And I think that's better than $800 billion on weapons. I think we can probably trim a little bit of the fat, you know, get it into this system, see if this system works, you know, try it for a while. But the tax buy-in that hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, man, Mac would probably fuck with that idea.
Love
the
it,
idea
100%.
of I would extend this to food, because right now, public food. Go to a school and eat some public food. Gross. Go to a prison. Eat some public food. Go to the military. Eat some public food.
Trash.
Pretty trash. Even the best military defects are still going to have some trash.
It's like a Luby's.
Yeah. It's like a Luby. It's like a Denny's. Yeah. It's like
you know, it's like not necessarily, it doesn't, like when you get to the higher levels, it's not necessarily like disgusting, but it's not good for you either.
That's the point I'm trying to get to. It's not good for you.
Yeah.
Right? So let's say, because right now, what are my private options? Do contain some options that are good for me. I could go to like a whole organic thing. Obviously, the barrier to entry is higher when you talk about the money. It costs a little bit more to get some like really good organic food. Not
Prepared
always.
For you. Yeah.
Not always. Wait, or even if you get like, you can go get vegetables and get fruits, but you still need like your proteins and some of these other things. So I'm saying general cost overall, it's cheaper to eat bad than it is good. That would be my thesis right now.
I've heard studies
It's
that
not
go against
true at
that.
all.
Okay, well, let's talk about ease of access then. How many
ease of access for sure.
How many bananas are within a block of Craig and Losi?
None.
Yeah, probably none.
The old 10-week-old ones at the 7-Eleven.
But I could pile up on a pallet 7,000 pounds of cornstarched food.
Agreed.
In that same block.
Agreed.
So that's kind of like, yeah, maybe it is cheaper to go and get your produce
Agreed.
and your vegetables and find the right proteins and get your meat the right way to where you're not paying tons of money. But the ease of access is like,
You got to cook.
Yeah, well, not just cooking.
No, it's hard to find too.
Find it too. Like, go find all those.
Shit, I even have a hard time finding quality produce in my area. You know, like my area is a 10 square miles.
Well, I like to cook chicken. I do. I like to cook chicken. Sometimes it's pretty fucking hard to find some chicken in the grocery store because they ain't got no chicken sometimes. Now, sucks, you know, but I could go get the thousands of prepackaged cornstarch options. So my thesis, I guess, is not necessarily it's cheaper to eat shitty food than it is it's more expensive to get the good food. We'll go with ease of access.
It's easier.
We have much
It's more convenient, rather.
And man, the things we do for convenience in America.
Oh, yeah.
We're almost at the part now where pretty soon in 30 years, everybody's going to culturally wear diapers so they can just shit their pants because they're so comfortable.
My
And
aunt
they're
once
so
told me
funny.
that when she got stationed in New Orleans during Mardi Gras, and there were people that were like wearing catheters so that they wouldn't have to like go to the bathroom and stop partying.
Exactly. Like this idea that
Weird.
we will do anything for comfort in America.
Which
So
is weird because that's not even comfortable.
the point I want to get to is like it's comfortable and easy for these people in the short term and the access of their shit food. So where I want to go with this is, okay, we don't have good public food in any of our current public options. That has to fucking change for real. Like that has to change. If we are going to be feeding children a meal a day or 2 meals a day, we need to be feeding them with what we scientifically can agree on is good food. And not shit food.
Yeah, but technically the government's definition of good, like a good diet
Reimagining
is
the
still
entire
the
system.
the pyramid,
Yeah.
the food pyramid.
We
which
need to
is terrible.
reimagine-
That's not healthy.
Just like with the post office, we need to reimagine the whole system because the FDA is not the people currently right now that I would trust with finding out what the healthiest food is.
And
for
90% of us aren't farmers anymore. So it's
we got 1% right now.
Like I definitely
gotta
think
trust
that
these
you said We
farmers.
got to change that whole system up. But I would be interested. My question is like, elaborate. What does it mean to have a
Okay.
public food option?
I would love to elaborate. So right now I'm talking just about the current public options we have, like schools and prisons and the military, right? So we adjust that, right? We use that as an example. We have some sort of public cafeteria works. And that public cafeteria works doesn't have soda and fucking cornstarch and all this shit. It is the healthiest options that we can provide locally sourced, that will be a healthy alternative, cost-efficient option for you and your family. Instead of $4.99 for a bucket of KFC, maybe we should be able to get a hodgepodge of vegetables, fruits, and protein from our local cafeteria for the same price.
And
or
these
cheaper.
And these are going to populate at the rate of a 7-Eleven or
I
a
have
KFC.
I have not expanded this out yet to understand like how it would fit into our current system.
That's kind of where I'm at with it, in the sense of like right now, if I wanted to go get decent food, let's call it decent food, maybe not even the best option, I have to go to a grocery store, right? And I get that too. Like there's only so many grocery stores. Like if you don't have a vehicle and no public transportation works, then how you get into your groceries? You're walking a mile, 2 miles, okay, and then you're doing it by hand. How much can you carry, right?
So
how feasible is this?
So here's how this public cafeteria might actually work. Maybe it's a one spot, like a post office. Maybe it's one central location, right, for each county or something, or each city, however you want to adapt that and scale it up. We already have Uber Eats with like 50-cent delivery fees, where you pay maybe a $5 overhead on the driver and then plus them with a tip, right? We already have these type of systems in place. Add the cafeteria to that system. Like maybe
or just Meals on Wheels,
or Meals on Wheels.
Meals on. I used to do that in the Boy Scouts
because we currently have soup kitchens, and they're usually run by like private organizations. Sometimes they're run by the city or the state or the federal, whatever. I don't know the exact parameters of how every soup kitchen works, but I know that's a bottom of the barrel. You get the slop. You come in there if you're homeless. I just want to take that option and expand it to where, we still have a soup kitchen. You can still get free food. We still have a place for you to get some slop, but we also have $2.99 bunches of kale. We also have carrots, as many as you could eat for fucking 45 cents. Any of these kind of...
Yeah, but the food stamps already... Because, I just don't...
We accept food stamps.
The problem... See, the thing that I... Because when you... Okay, so two things. When you were talking about how there's no public foods that's like providing good foods, I was like, well, you can get food stamps. And then that's kind of how... I like the idea of food stamps even more because it's like I get to buy the food that I want.
Keep that
I think
system.
that there's weird things that you're allowed to buy, like... You can get like Jack in the Box with your food stamps. Like that's fucking weird.
You can get soda. You can get sugary cereal.
That seems weird. But either way, like I wouldn't really want to tell people like what they can and can't use, like to buy their food. But then again, they're kind of using my money. Like everybody's money is in it, so that's part of my money. And now you're spending my money to feed yourself and your children.
That's why I like that his best idea yet has been the checkbox taxes. Because it's not your money. It's everybody else's money who's also on the public works cafeteria.
It's an opt-in.
Like, if
like
those
that.
systems where you get to, like if I get my net bill, right? This is my net tax bill. And I get 6 different categories. Would you like to spend it on military defense? Would you like to spend your money on, the public works offices?
You get an opportunity to almost vote with your dollar.
Pick max 3, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, God, whoo, boy, would I adore that system.
And
so that it could immediately extinguish this whole conversation of being like, well, why does my tax dollars have to? They don't.
Not even
Your tax dollars don't do that.
Really?
Well, really, if they're giving me like, imagine if they said that you can pick 3 out of 5 things that your tax money can go to right now, but they're not going to change any of the ways that they're doing any of those programs.
I would still love it.
It'd be a little bit better, but it'd still be like, I would be putting it into things like food stamps and Medicaid and stuff like that, but I don't agree with how they spend that money. So if they don't change how they, like, I'm still wanting my money to go to those things, just not the way that they're spending it. And so that's my issue. And so
but we're not arguing would you rather have the list versus no taxes. We're saying would you rather pay the taxes you pay now, or would you rather pay them with
like a targeted tax where you can be
technically what we're talking about is his thing. And
like
so his thing is like a buy-in thing. So like you have the option to spend a little bit extra, like if you were going to buy something at a store and they're like, you can donate your change to this.
Oh, no. I think
maybe I would keep like a flat tax rate, like in episode part 1, where you talked about it was episode 50. Maybe, flat rate tax. We figure out what's fair. Because my whole concept comes down to this idea that the government can be fair. Period. It can be. I believe it. I don't know necessarily that it's true. I can't prove it. But I believe it. In my heart of hearts, I believe that a system could exist that is fair, that is not equitable for everybody. It's not completely equal, but it's as fair as we can get it. You know, as little number of people slip through the cracks as possible. Because right now, the cracks in our system are crevices, thousands of feet. They're Marianas Trenches. And people are falling in them shits all the time, whether it's eating shitty food and watching shitty television and rotting your life away, whether it's becoming homeless because of your addiction to the pain pills that Pfizer and the fucking stupid fucking family pushed for years, whatever it is, like the environment affects us, whether we like to admit it or not. And our environment right now is full of crevices. So the idea here is to find a fair way to use our government, patch up these holes, and grow into something better. That's why the public works was key. That's why I had to get you guys with that number one, is because my complete hypothesis is that we could fairly have systems in place for everyone to have more participation in. And that includes our food, our transportation, and maybe our military and our police. Maybe there's a way to look at this public works and assign a better way for our military and for our police to exist. I didn't get super deep into that idea, but I thought locally, you know, because in the military, you go to MEPS and then you're just, bam, shipped off somewhere random. Fucking Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Okay, you're there for 9 weeks, boom. Now you're in fucking San Diego, California. Well, I'm from Tennessee. Well, tough shit, buddy. You're in San Diego for 3 years, and then we're going to deploy you to Korea. You know, so it's like, what kind of community other than the Brotherhood of Arms is that man going to have? He's never going to buy a fucking house there. He's never going to settle there. He's going to be a transient individual now. And I felt that transience in my military career. Even though I stayed at Fort Hood for the majority of my entire time, I felt shook around. I never felt like I was at home in Texas.
You never knew where you were going to be.
You never knew where you were going to go next. They'll just fucking ship you off at a moment's notice. So the idea of a public works, when you apply that filter to like the military, maybe the military is more of a local entity. You know, I don't want to get into the National Guard topic because, you know, being that we were real army. Anyways, the joke being that National Guard right now is not how I would envision my system. My system would be some sort of collaboration between these ideas of police and military into some sort of localized, quick reactionary force that could be called upon in a time of need. Almost like the Second Amendment and local militias, except not white people chasing down slaves and killing them.
Agreed. So you have a defensive-minded military in your system here.
The way that I would build my constitution, it would allow for a government to have a military. But I like max bottom-up ideas of like the actions that military could ever take being a localized and then ballooned up to a federal all-state kind of thing. I took every time you guys had a great idea, I was like, I would implement that.
Yeah, right.
Because
right,
I had the luck of going third. That's why we had a costume change. There's that joke you know. I remember. But now that we're in part 3 and I've listened to all your great ideas, I would certainly apply them to my system. Much as if I went first, I think I'd bleed into yours a little bit.
Oh, like having been first, like I'm like, damn, there's so many things I wish I could have added to my system that I didn't put in. After hearing y'all's ideas.
I wrote down some things for like elections too. Like I would love a system that has much more power in petitions and signatures. We have this great example of during the Obama presidency. Obama was like, hey, we got this website, whitehouse.gov. You can go there and you can create these petitions and get all these online signatures and we'll address them in like a town hall on Google or some shit. And 3 out of the top 5 were legalize weed immediately on a federal level, please. Here's a fucking 10 million signature petition.
Yeah.
And they didn't address them.
Right.
Of course not.
Of course not. They didn't touch that.
True.
So we tried this kind of system where it's like the people have a voice,
right.
And we were like,
yeah,
you don't actually have a voice.
Right.
So I would want something like that with some teeth behind it.
Yeah, you just want them to listen to the voice. Like we have a voice. Like they let us talk sometimes. They just don't listen to us.
And so this is a great point where I want to give a cautionary tale about natural rights.
Just going to the
and
book.
Natural orders. I'm going to the book for the first time. So let's talk about John Locke and natural rights. He talked about life, liberty, and property. People want to survive, and they want to be as safe as possible from threats to their lives. That's part of the reason why they create a government, is because of these natural rights. People want to be as free as possible. They want to be able to make their own decisions and to live as they please. These are all things we can agree with, right? Mm-hmm. In a state of nature, Locke had some very cautionary ideas. He said that he believed in a state of nature where we don't have a government, we just have these rights. People would protect these natural rights by using their own strength and skill. People who are weaker or less skilled would find it very hard to protect their rights. Instead, weaker people would try to protect their rights by joining together against the strong. And he believed that in this state of nature, no one's life, liberty, or property would be safe. They would feel insecure because in this state of nature, there would be no governments or laws to protect people, and governments don't exist until people create them. So without a created government to protect these natural rights in a state of nature, the weak would band together and subjugate the strong. It would be like the idea of like communism. This idea of like the workers unite, crush the proletariat or whatever, and try to institute some weaker, where all the weak people get a say. we decide the system.
Right.
So this idea is like illustrated by like little fish, bigger fish eating the little fish, bigger fish eating that slightly bigger fish, but a school of fish then eating that big fish because it's like, fuck that big fish, it's eating all of us, let's get together and kill it. And so that was just kind of a little thing about natural rights that I would love for the public works to exist. I would love for the workers to unite and to have some say in unions and means of production and things like that. But be careful. You got to be careful, because if we don't protect everybody's rights, people can band together and subjugate your rights. And consolidation of power is a real thing. Right now, I would say we have that in America. Like our rights are decided not by the people in America right now. They're decided by multinational corporations and political interests that control 90% of the world's wealth.
So you think we should band together and eat them?
No, I'm saying that that's kind of a system encourages that to happen. So eat the rich is a thing because of the system.
I love that.
But I want a system where we still have our natural rights protected. We still have the covenant, the social contract to have a government that protects us without our government being that gigantic entity that we all want to eat. You see what I'm saying?
I love that. Yep.
So it's kind of a reimagining, like you said, bottom up.
Love that.
It's a lot harder to eat the rich when the rich are your neighbors.
Yep.
When all the wealth is consolidated in Washington, D.C. and everybody's in their mega McMansions behind their gates,
it's easy to dehumanize them and everything.
Yep,
and
they're the other now. But so I'm not saying redistribute the wealth. I'm just saying like the way our power structures are formed need to be much more spread out and much more bottom up. So
it sounds like you want what this country was supposed to be without, I don't know, being like hijacked maybe is a good word. Well, just that, like, I think that there's a, like they talk about it in law, they talk about the spirit of the law, and they talk about the letter of the law. And like, those aren't necessarily always the same things. You know what I mean? Like, there's the spirit of the Constitution, and then there's what the Constitution actually says.
Yeah, I loved this. This dude did a whole, like, I saw a quote on TikTok. I'm trying to get it real quick, and he was just like, you can spend money on a house, but that doesn't make it a home. He was like, you can buy food, but you cannot buy an appetite. You know, he was like talking about how like you could buy the material of certain things, but the spirit of those things is still a whole.
Yeah, we could set up the most perfect utopian, democratic, socialist economy and government, and it could eat itself.
And it's not necessarily just that, but I think that really what I was saying is just that I think from what I've studied about the Constitution and the founders and the Federalist Papers and like listening to their arguments, I think that they were much more, I think that they left the Constitution so vague specifically because they were in a way shirking the responsibility, but I mean, they had already taken on a lot of responsibility. Like, I don't really blame them for shirking a little bit of it to people further down the line from them to be like, look, we can't think of everything. You guys will have to figure out some shit out. But in that, you open the door to, I mean, malevolence maybe is a good word for it. You know, people that can exploit the system that you set up. And so it's like no system is ever completely secure from being interpreted and used in a way that wasn't exactly to the tune of how the people who set up that system would agree to it.
Yeah.
In the same way that like a person sets up a company, and then the company ends up growing very big, and now they have a lot of voices that they have to hear from, and they're like, you know what, this company's doing things that I can't agree with.
I would think
anymore.
that part of the thing that led to the Constitution and how it was worded and why it is vague, I don't think the people, maybe the founding fathers, intentionally made it vague, or I also don't think that they were like dumb in any way. I think that they're a product of their times.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had gone to them and said, you don't really address women's right to vote or women's right to own anything, they would be like, that's because they can't.
Yeah, that's not a thing.
Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that in a bad way. Like,
no,
these people are terrible
people. That's just the way it was.
It's just 250 years ago.
That's just not what they were thinking about in these meetings.
They would have. It would be unheard of for the idea. Like if they in 1787 were like, all our slaves should be freed and given the right to vote, you'd be laughed out of the room. Not because it's impossible. It happened 100 years later. It's just so unfathomable to them.
It's like a new concept. Yeah, that's huge. You know, that's totally like, you know, the thing that I think a lot of people miss when they villainize these people from back then. It's like, you gotta understand, like, you're working on a different level of consciousness than those people did, you know, and like your awareness of the situation is changed for hundreds of years, you know, and like, so where you're standing, you're like, I can't believe somebody would do this. But if you go back hundreds of years, like everybody was doing that. Like it was actually crazy that we were even thinking about not doing it.
Yeah.
So it's like
the fact that you're now wearing a suit is crazy.
You know what I mean? Like, whoa, like you said, if they came and saw how we dress now, they would be like, are you fucking insane?
Yeah, they would literally scream like, well, look at, that's pornography. Like, you know, like it's just exposed midriffs and, you know, leggings. Jesus Christ. Can you imagine if somebody walked by Thomas Jefferson with a dump truck ass and some leggings?
Nah, dude, just imagine one of these
on
people.
Thursday afternoon.
Just imagine like their faces if they saw all the fat people. You know what I mean? Like,
you're saying there was no fat people then?
There wasn't as many.
Any fat people.
There were some. There weren't as many. Some of
royal
our
people were
Some
fat.
of our founding fathers were fat. Shout out Benjamin
overweight.
Well,
really,
rich,
like he had a little bit of like rich people.
Rich
yeah,
people
exactly.
get fat.
Like, rich people get fat.
Rich people get fat all
but
the
how many
time.
rich people were there?
Not a lot. I almost it's weird. That used to almost be an exclusively rich problem of, like you said, being fat, because that was like a sign of wealth.
Now it's like a poor problem.
Well, yeah, they like shifted that down real
Somehow
quick.
an abundance of calories is a poor person's problem.
Yeah, now because now they stuffed empty calories and
Exactly,
everything. It's
yeah.
crazy.
That's because the most accessible food to every single person in Las Vegas is a fucking
bullshit.
cheeseburger.
Yeah.
You know what? That's another thing that I really liked about your system, though, in a sense. Like it does. Okay, I want to give one thing I liked and one thing I didn't like, right? And so it's like, I love that idea of, it's not just saying like the government needs to take care of more people. That's not what you're saying. It's like, what you're saying is, we, the people, need to govern ourselves in a way that is more conducive to everybody, right?
Correct.
Like we need to approach the way we govern ourselves with the mentality of teamwork and not just, it's fine to have freedom, but to not be self-serving, you know? So it's like, I think that I love that idea, right?
Yeah, because we're integrating the post-internet world to these ideas.
Yeah.
I would argue that the more you have, like that you come to your actions through that sort of a mindset of community and togetherness, the less government you even need in the first place.
Well, I think this,
like you said, it's like a tool that we would use to provide these.
Well, the government is there to make sure that people who would otherwise disagree with what the rest of you have set up as your rules for society, the government's there to make sure that the people stay in line. Like, that's really the government's job. It's there to protect your rights. You guys have all come together and be like, we decided that these are our rights for our country.
And the government
And
says,
we're gonna
we'll
make sure,
uphold it.
we're gonna make sure that
we're gonna make jail.
people don't fuck with
Yes.
you
Yeah.
and those rights.
Right.
Right.
We're gonna make jail. Right.
Which
but
brings
if that's what I'm saying though. If the more you get people to come to your daily actions where you're not trying to violate people's rights, then the less need that you have for the government to control your actions.
I think if
you don't need the control if people are
I
willing
think
to
the
do it.
institution of these public works would decrease the prison population overall, because I would also integrate rehabilitation for nonviolent drug-related offenses, and when it comes to reforming the judicial system, we'd still have prison, we'd still have consequences. I would find some way to not have slavery.
Yeah,
I don't know exactly what that looks like,
that,
but
prison,
I'd figure that out.
Prison's like isolating people from the rest of society seems like a good idea in the meantime while they're dangerous to them or otherwise violating their rights. But to just like you said, farm them out to like work or to just let them sit there and rot, like that's not a good plan.
Or just become more jail
people. Just become
Yeah.
better criminals. Like that's not a good plan. Like we should get them in there and, as they say, like it sounds dumb, like correct them, but that's why it's called corrections facilities. Teach them and like get them to a point where they don't need to do crime.
Right. There's tons of things that I think we could do that would be helpful for the current prison population that is absurdly bloated. And I think that I would, given if this episode was 6 hours long, I think we could get into that. But for now, I would say some way to have a prison and a consequence without the slavery is attainable in this system. And I think it would be a dramatic decrease in our prison population and better overall for America if we figured that out.
Mm-hmm. I was on the tangent a little while ago about the thing I liked about your government and then the thing I didn't like. And then you hit me with this other thing I wanted to say too about the government isn't only there to keep you in line though. It also makes the lines. I thought about that a lot in the sense of like a government also provides structure to the things that we're doing. So like when I like think about that, like you wouldn't need government. Like I don't want everybody trying to do roads, and I don't want you thinking I want to do triangle roads and he wants to do square roads and I want to do circle roads and we're all going to build roads on top of each other. Like I don't like that system either. I like the idea of like the government or all of us coming together being like, we want roads. Okay, cool. We decide this is the system of roads we want. Now you, as a coordinated effort between all of us, build roads, So it's not necessarily just keeping people in line. It is a good tool for us to implement common agenda. Other thing I was saying I don't like about your system is the fairness part of it, because that's the thing where I think is altruistic, in a sense like what is fair is different to everybody. I would
I'm talking about like a mathematical fair in my brain where it's like we understand economics well enough to know like what inflation is, what the percentage of inflation is, what milk cost in 1970 versus 2022. We can look at this kind of stuff and say, okay, maybe our minimum wage should be this amount. It's like a mathematical number. We apply that concept more broadly to where it's like, okay, what should the minimum meal price be for my public cafeteria? Well, let's base it on the market. Let's base it on inflation.
And then the market changes, though.
And that number changes.
Right, and then you get stuck in a negative cycle loop.
I don't know exactly how those loops work. What I'm saying is, economically speaking, hopefully we have enough of an understanding of how an economy works to price our public option correctly so that it has a place in the market.
I mean, you don't really even, all you need to do to make sure that happens is just that you don't spend more money than you're making.
Well,
so
even
however you make it, whether it's through taxes or whatever, or fees that people pay for the services, like a regular corporation, you just, as long as you don't spend more than you're making, you can keep doing it.
And I also just really want it to be something where it's an affordable, low cost, like public option that's just not bad for you. Mm-hmm. So like maybe it costs 85 cents more to get the meal at the public cafeteria works rather than go to the Taco Bell. But you have this incentive of, but I know the public works feeds me healthy food. So, I would hope
But that's already there, though. Like, if you get food stamps, which is how the government already provides food assistance to people, you already have the option to either go to the cafe or go to the fast food or to go to the grocery store where they sell the good food.
But what's more convenient right now is the fast food. If we find a way to apply the same convenience
I know. I agreed with you with like the idea of like the Meals on Wheels or something like that, where if like you can't get to the grocery store, then the grocery store will they'll do free SNAP delivery or something like that. Like if you're buying with SNAP, we'll deliver all of your food delivery, like all your food for free. Like all the stuff that you can't buy, because there's stuff that you can't buy with SNAP. But Huh?
Sounds hella expensive.
Well, I mean, they already spent a lot of money is on Snap is like already a lot. Like, but the
now
problem
that you're
is
gonna have
that
a bunch of Uber drivers out here delivering like government.
Well, see,
meals
the
from
thing
the
is that
cafeteria, you know?
the problem with it is that it has to be set up in a way that you have to do it. You have to run it as if you were in competition in the market, because that's the way that it maintains efficiency. And because it doesn't have to be, you could run the system that he's describing probably for less money than we spend on food benefits now, because of how bloated and inefficient the food benefits are in the way that they're run. And so it's like, I've always thought that. Like, it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about is basically what we have now, but without all of the bullshit that ended up getting caked on through the corruption and the political interests and the business interests. Like, if it was literally just supposed to be like what it was, like if it was what it was supposed to be.
A functioning system
that provides the benefits that are supposed to be for everybody. Not, hey, this government is a tool for you to get what you want if you can buy enough influence in it.
Yeah. If you have enough,
I fuck with that.
Yeah, if you have enough money, you could drill into our fucking precious lands.
Yeah, like we'll let you massage the rocks for gases if you have enough money. And
but
it's
we
like,
will
what?
not provide you with a cafeteria full of kale.
Yeah, we'll give you money to go buy Jack in the Box.
Yeah, you can get Jack in the Box money.
You want some?
We got plenty of that.
That's true.
And so like I totally fuck with a lot of that. And it's just like I've said before, like deals that I would take tomorrow, shift 80% of the military budget into public works stuff. Hell yeah, do that. I'm totally down for that. If you said you wanted to tack it on top of everything we're doing already, I'd be like, nah, I'm not for that. Yeah, I can't support that at all. Yeah. Like, I want to do the thing, believe me, I want to do the things you're talking about, but I just can't, like, no more deficit spending.
And I didn't want to get necessarily too far into elections or too far into how the Senate or the Congress works or stuff like that. I wanted to do more of a broad general, this is how I would set up the system talk.
I addressed a little bit of that in mine, though, and he reimagined that.
And so I wrote down something with elections. I wrote, some of this doesn't make sense. I wrote down, like, chain of command, meaning that maybe, like, we have trusted electors along the way. Does that make sense?
No.
Mm-mm.
Because, like, if I had, let's say I was part of a church, okay, and everyone in my church votes, and all those votes go by chain of custody to our tribal leader, and that tribal leader then brings those to the election official or something, and like that's how it's done in more of a community way. Like
instead of like, isn't it kind of like that now though? Because like right now, like at a local voting office, like those are people that live in your town. It's not like the government sending in their secret.
But they're not your squad leader. I was thinking like I'm a troop. My squad leader is who I like address with all my concerns and all of my things.
Like my community leader, whoever.
And that squad leader has a platoon leader, and that platoon leader has a first. You know what I mean?
Well,
like
you're just talking about integrating people that you trust into the political system, which I'm for. Again, I guess it just depends on how you ended up doing it. But
we keep throwing
I think the problem with the idea of like, oh, well, the people at your town hall or whatever where you vote is the people that live around you. It's like, yes, but you don't know what their motivations for being in that position are. You know what I mean? Like,
they're faceless bureaucrats.
You know, those kinds of people are supposed to be unbiased, and they're just there to facilitate the process. But you know that they're politically active in some way. Like, otherwise they wouldn't even bother. Like, nobody that doesn't care about politics is a poll worker. You know what I mean? So they have their own opinions. And the problem is that if you don't know those people particularly well enough, it doesn't matter that they live around you, especially if you live in an urban area where you live around millions of people that you don't know.
Well, like I said, we keep throwing around these words like trust and fair and all that stuff. And I'm like, what does this mean? Like, what does it mean, like, to trust this person? Because, yeah, I trust them so far as I can see them. But then once my vote goes down the street, I don't know what Uncle Jim's doing with it. And maybe I trust Uncle Jim, but he's got to hand it off to some other guy. Now we've already lost contact. Like, I don't know that other guy.
Currently, unless
you might trust him, but I don't trust him.
Unless you vote in person, currently you just put it into a mailbox and hope it gets there.
The Bitcoin, the blockchain voting is
yeah, I'm down for
definitely.
The
I think a more efficient solution. Like it kind of is in the same spirit of what you're talking about. When I get more trust in my vote but I trust that with robots who are unifiably objective.
And the other thing
at the moment.
And the other thing is, I already said
Nakamura comes back.
Yeah, or until they train their algorithm into the robot.
I also, earlier mentioned the petitions and the signatures. I would like to see that involved in the voting process.
I would love to see something like a rule where it's like, if you can get enough signatures from people that can verify that they live in the area that this is going to affect, then like that just ipso facto gets done. Like it's not a matter of like, well, then now the legislature will talk about it. Like, no. Here's it is. Like we all said, this is what we're gonna do.
I would structure
this is a list of instructions.
I would structure it to make it even more dummy proof so that people understand what's going on with the world and participate more. I would say that my public broadcasting channel that's free and available to every single person with a television or a radio would have a weekly conversation about the largest petitions and current signature trends upward to be on the next cycle of the ballots. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't just be, oh, there's this website that exists that nobody talks about. Like Obama didn't talk about those 3 out of the top 5 being about marijuana. That couldn't really happen in this system unless all along the way, people were actively working against regulations that I would want to be in place.
I definitely see now the parallels between or just how you imagine a communist type government would work, right? And like how it could work well, but then also how it goes awry.
Yeah, that's why when we talked to Mac, I talked about ethnostates.
Yeah, because it can go awry.
Things can go awry. Yeah,
like when you say that, that sounds good. Like I love that. Like what you just described about the public broadcasting system is awesome. But then it's when you get to North Korea, then their public broadcasting system is
state-run
propaganda that only we get to, when you start eliminating the other options against your public option, you could see how, and like you said with his system too, how it starts breeding a little pocket of ethno hatred, militia type mentality or whatever, anarchist type mentality.
Sometimes when you get like-minded individuals
racial
together, they just hate black people.
You know what I mean? Yeah, they promote some crazy ass shit.
This is the interesting thing though. The interesting thing about the communism and the socialism and the idea that you're having a government, the whole idea of modern governments is that they're representations of the people. That's the whole idea. And communism is just other people's idea of how to best represent the people.
More accurate representations.
The interesting thing about it though is that with the communism, they with any of these systems, you will inevitably end up in a situation where somebody or some bodies have to make decisions that affect lots of people. This is where I get hung up about it because I'm that's what is appealing to me about libertarianism is that it doesn't have the person above you that you inherently need in the system to tell everybody what's going to happen because you decide what happens. And there's just basic level ground rules. And the ground rules aren't changed or supposed when the new guy comes in, he's not okay, now it's my turn for my rules and we're going to change the whole system. It's these are the rules and everybody gets to play in this sandbox, like you said, above this floor. And I like the idea of a floor. And it sounds like what you're talking about is just raising the floor from slop level
patching over some cracks.
To kale.
I'm trying to patch over some cracks.
And so that's the thing that gets me is that in communism, they always end up being okay, well, who are we going to, we got to pick somebody to decide what we all want. And I just never got that. I don't see how they end up you've done this revolution, you throw over the people in power, and you're all right, now we're going to get some people that we like to be in there, but you just don't see it. That's what I'm saying. But you just don't see it playing out how it plays out, which is never the way you thought it was.
Because we've never had instant information technology in our pockets until today. So now we have a system where if this was Russia in the 30s or something like that, or whatever, everyone sees what you're doing. There's transparency, sometimes there's accountability, not always, but there's, much more accountability and transparency. So when something happens in Egypt where all of a sudden they vote in the Muslim Brotherhood and all the people are we wanted democracy, but we didn't want this type of democracy because these people are going to enforce things that we, the people, don't want. So we voted them in, but now they've switched their game up. What are we going to do? The military stepped in and usurp their power. So I'm talking about a system where instead of the military usurping the power of the person who's trying to seize control, we, the people, rise with our sickles and hammers. No, I'm joking.
Right, but okay, but that's my point, though, is that's what everybody says. Like, that's the beginning thought, is that we're going to, the people, we, the people, we're all going to come together and rise up against our oppressors. But it's always the problems don't ever start to come around until they start asking themselves, what do we do now? Like, now there's nobody making the decisions, and you all inevitably come to the conclusion that decisions have to be made. Somebody has to make them. Now we're arguing about who's making the decisions, and we're back in the same boat that we started with.
But then you think that there's a system where nobody has to make decisions, though.
No. It's that you make the decisions for yourself.
What about the things that are bigger than yourself?
The decisions of other people that affect you, things of that nature.
Roads. I'm back at roads, just like travel.
Yeah, your example about roads was so comedic, really, because it's like there wasn't anybody in the government telling us how to make roads when we were making them.
When there was 4 million of us back then. There's 330 something million of us.
So
now.
we should probably.
And you're saying that, and
we probably need a coordinated
other
effort
people are going to come around and be like, I have this idea for triangular roads.
They might.
No, I'm looking at it as
I'm saying that you're saying that you don't want that, but if it were working and it was better than rectangular roads, wouldn't you want that option to be available?
Yeah, so then who's going to build the road? So like, am I going to have a square road that's still operational and you build your triangle road across my road, right? Like, or we're going to fight and compete for the space to build our road, like, or how we're going to go about. Like, I want to build my road here and you want to build your road here, but you want it to be in a different design. You want to do 16-lane highways, but we only have, you know what I'm saying? Like, there has to be some coordinated effort, especially at this size.
The voice the voice of the people, because currently in the situations that we have, the real world examples, we have, this neighborhood right here is poor. Okay, let's build a highway interchange that blasts right fucking through this entire neighborhood that goes up 3 fucking stories, that goes to a bypass to go to another highway, because we got a lot of truckers coming through here. The people should have some sort of voice in a decision like that, because you're literally eradicating a neighborhood. In some cases, they did it specifically targeting black and lower income areas. So now we're talking about, you've already got a populace that's feeling left out, and you're going to fucking raise their neighborhood to put a high-rise through it?
But you don't think the government wouldn't do that, though?
I'm saying
it was the government that did that. Those are the people that build highways.
Exactly. But when the people have more of a say, when the government is more accessible, when it's, I know you keep saying the word fair. I won't use fair anymore. Let's say accessible to the outcomes that the majority of people want. So when those outcomes are more accessible to people, so you can tell the people, we want to build a highway overchange. These are the options of how we do it. People in those neighborhoods, the local people, I feel like they should have.
But that's overrun
by the majority. That's who decided to build a bypass through their neighborhood, was the majority. The majority decided, we want a bypass to get through this neighborhood quicker. Fuck these poor people.
The minority of the people who made the decisions are the people that made that decision. I don't think it was the majority of the people in that town or in that city.
Why do you think they built that highway?
For profits.
Right. Which everybody wants. All along the chain. The truckers want profits, and the truckers have to deliver shit to places. And the places that need the shit need roads.
Profits over
population?
population?
And so they're building the roads.
Is that what we're saying? Profits over the will of the people?
What he's saying is, like, I'm here, and I want my Amazon shipped next day, right? I don't live in Philadelphia, wherever they're building this highway. So my point, I'm part of the majority. I'm voting highway, please.
Yeah, and I want a highway. You don't even know these poor neighborhoods.
The rest of the state could be that majority that are all like, yes, highway, and this little neighborhood that's getting crushed is like, please, no highway.
Whereas,
like, sorry,
if it wasn't up to everybody else to decide if a highway gets built in your neighborhood, if they came to you and they were like, look, we have come up with a plan to build a highway through this neighborhood, but we have to get all of your permission to do that. So now we have to cut you in on this deal. You guys get this is how we're going to improve your neighborhood for letting us have this highway through it so we can make some money. Whereas right now, your whole neighborhood could just get blasted off the face of the earth because some other people somewhere else decided that it was good for them. And it is good for them. And it may be good for more people in the total, in net, to have that highway than it is bad for this 150 people that live in this neighborhood or whatever it is. So, and that's the problem with the whole democracy idea, is that like the net good is always bad for somebody. And so it's like, you're never going to come up with a system where you're eliminating bad for everybody and it's good for everybody. And you're just arguing about levels of good.
But I would institute your bottom-up idea to where the people that are affected by these decisions have a say in these decisions. And even though that decision does go up that chain, it's a lot less likely that the people at the bottom are going to be the ones getting ignored or having their rights trampled upon.
Well, and so
like they might still get trampled, but I think that's where the disconnect does happen, because like you said, like right now, it's not that those little people got their voice overran by the majority. It's probably like they just didn't get to say anything at all.
Because six guys who make a decision on who gets the contract to build the thing say, we want this company to do it because this guy's brother-in-law is on the board. And then that guy says, well, I think I want to build it right here. And they say, sounds good, Jim. And then 16
I don't
or 17.
know how you get around that part, though. That's the thing that I'm talking about with the lack of fairness. Like, those 6 dudes, they exist, whether we got his system or your system, my system, and I don't know how you get around those 6 dudes. You know,
more transparency, more accountability, and that's about all I have for that. I don't really have a great answer. Like, it can't just be like, well, the public owns the construction companies. Like, that's like if we start literally taking over every single aspect of our world. You know what I mean?
Well, then that's why I can't get down with him. That's why I'm like, too. Like, I love the idea of ultimate personal freedom and liberty, but there is a level of cooperation that has to happen amongst us, you know?
Yes, there is.
A basic
All
social
I'm
contract?
saying is that there's nobody above you to tell you what that social contract is going to be.
But that's always whether it's going to be your town mayor or it's going to be the city tribal leader, like
the person tasked with protecting you, which in every government there's a person tasked with protecting you.
But the point is that the government, like, I'm not saying, again, I don't know how this became a conversation about my system, but it's not about not having a government. It's about having governments that operate for smaller amounts of people. And then you get to decide which government you want. That's my only gripe with the government. The government's too big, and people have way more influence over what it decides for me than I do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's why the buy-in, I think, really resonated with us, because it's a way for all these wonderful programs to exist and for us to support what we want to support with the most powerful tool we have, which is good old American greenbacks.
You know, that was literally the only, maybe not the only, but the main common theme between all 3 of our ideas was like, more people like involved.
Yeah, more regular people. And I mean, that's not surprising. That's literally the whole idea of this podcast, is like, how do we get more regular people involved in these conversations about shit that affects all of us?
I had this talk.
I feel like everything that affects me sometimes is made by other people. And I'm like, how come nobody asked me what I thought about this?
I had this conversation with a doomer yesterday who was just like, even if you see all these problems, even if you have all these ideas and you follow all the government happenings, what can you do about it? And I said, well, ultimately right now, with our current system of voting, almost nothing.
Yeah.
But what I can do and what helps me go forward in my day-to-day is not accepting their bullshit, speaking out against it, talking to you people, getting people to wake the fuck up. When someone talks to me and says some shit that I think is like, yo, you're literally promoting a parasitic fucking like toxic, what do you call these things? A predatory system. You know, like I had somebody espousing to me like how great, you know, car insurance or something. I'm like, predators, fucking predators. And like when it comes to a lot of these things they're done predatorily, I guess is the word I'm trying to say. Go buy a car and don't get preyed upon. It ain't easy. It ain't easy to buy a car and not get preyed upon. You're going to get preyed upon in some way.
That's true.
They know how to get you. They are very efficient at getting you, and they're going to try their motherfucking damn. The Slick Willie going to get you in that 2017 Toyota.
Damn,
Prius.
man. I feel you, man. What if there was a world where me and the car salesman were working together to make a purchase?
God, can you imagine?
He wants
cars
me
for
to
the
get
people
the
by
best value. He's gonna make his money, and I want him to make his money. He deserves his money. Thank God he sold me a car. But what if we could just come to a mutual agreement that you're gonna get your cut, I'm gonna get my cut, and we're all gonna be
He's
happy.
not gonna cut that.
Instead of me feeling like we're sitting at like a battle of arms, like I want the best deal possible, and he's like, I want all your money.
You're sitting outside like, well, I got a new car, and he's in there with the door shut, counting the money, like scheme, boy, stuck him up.
And it's always like that, though. Like you said, all the systems are bred from a spirit. There's a spirit of law and a letter, and our spirit is very competitive. It's just very competitive, and I think that cooperation is just like we could use a little cooperation. I'm not saying take all the competition out. I love competition too.
Competition is good,
but cooperation, motherfucking,
it's works.
Yeah, it's tight too. Like shit.
You heard it here first, people. Cooperation.
It's tight.
That's the 2022 vibe. Get on this cooperation.
I want to do that, dude. We should just start pumping out quote shirts like crazy.
What was that great one you had about evaporate hate? I think it was. I said.
Yeah, evaporate hate, béarnaise sauce, and I just want to cooperation. Yeah. It's cool. Or something.
It's hip. Yeah. It could be a logo for like a fake tie-dye organic co-op.
Yeah. You tell us, what do you want to see on the cooperation shirt?
Cooperation is tight.
And look out for the tie-dye quote shirts coming out.
Yeah, they're coming,
right.
dude. I'm totally going to
get
like a whole series of just different quotable
Boy, the day I can
items.
wear my own merch. What a goddamn dream come true.
And you can wear our merch, too. Coming soon.
I'm currently wearing Nomad Troop 43 ACR merch. I helped design this motherfucker right here.
Yeah,
and I used to wear his old one, and it's a good sweater.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's a good sweater. I love that sweater.
Shout out to Mr. Thompson for imagining this logo.
Yeah, it's
good. Beautiful logo.
Good design,
man. So yeah, you're good. That was a good
I had fun. Neo-Internetalism is that was my bottom line. Was I want to take what happened 250 years ago with the writing of our Constitution and all these founding fathers' ideas and do a little renovation.
Thoroughly enjoyed your bringing us back into the time period of then, like compared to now, and why this conversation is a relevant conversation to have.
Yeah.
I know that there's probably a lot of people at home thinking like we're just utterly blasphemous right now, which I understand, but it's these conversations that birth what we have now and we love so much, and so I can't see why there couldn't be conversations of improvement.
Y'all gonna be laughing 10 years from now. You're gonna be riding the motherfucking public state-funded bus from Indiana to Arkansas to pick up some kale at the fucking public cookery.
My last point, sorry, is you got a good point though. It's like, look how well China has done in taking some of our ideas. Who's to say we couldn't take some of theirs and also capitalize just as well? So
diet communism.
Like
communism light. That's funny. Yeah, I will say that I'd have to see a little bit more about how the specifics of how your system works. But based on the kind of benefits you were offering in your system, I'd have to say that if your system were a small system that I could find within my larger meta system, you would be very high at the top of the list of places I would like to live. Because his kind of place is a place that I would like to live in a system like this. Because, like, again, I like the idea of helping people in filling those cracks of society like you were talking about. My problem right now is just the way that my current government goes about doing that. And so it's like, I really liked a lot of your ideas, and like the public works was like, I could get down with that a lot. Like if there was just like a cafeteria that you could go to just like get some, like,
I would work at these places.
I would
be like a
these
service.
things.
Like I would eat at the cafeteria. I would also volunteer at the cafeteria.
Oh my god, that's why I fucking love you guys. We're like
to take a bus like everywhere I go. I'm just like,
and that's something.
We're Captain Planet, dog. If we shoot our 3 rings into the air, someone is going to manifest in front of us.
And that's one thing. I was talking to somebody, one of my coworkers, at Jimmy John's, and I take the bus to get downtown to Jimmy John's because I take my bike. And it was funny because I was telling him, you know, like, I like public transportation. Like when we were in New York and riding around on the subway and everything.
Love that.
You feel like you're entwined with the city.
Yes. I loved
you
riding
feel
the
like
bus
you're
last
part,
week.
part of
the,
it. Like
of the city. You know, like you're like, I'm literally in the lifeblood veins of this city as it operates. And it's a really cool feeling.
I loved it.
And so like, I like and I just thought, one thing I thought was really interesting about New York, just a funny observation that just popped in my head, in like Manhattan and like in the nice areas, it's underground. The subway's underground. In like Harlem and Brooklyn where we were staying, in Queens and shit, it's above ground. And it's like, I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition. Like, and I'm imagining that it's much more expensive to put it underground. But, you know, it just goes to show like even the public system is varied in the different areas. Whereas like you would think that if you're going to put your public, like this is like everybody's taxes pay into this shit and everything. But in my neighborhood, I have to have this shit zoom right by my window on my 6th floor apartment.
Huge.
In Manhattan, it's underground.
Huge. You see this in like city parks and things like that.
I was trying to explain the layout of Vegas to somebody from back home who's never been to a place like this. And I was like, you know that main highway that runs through our town and how there's another like 6-lane highway road that crisscrosses it? I said, there's about 100 of those up and down a major highway line. And then there's another highway line with a bunch of those the other way. And he was like, what? And I was like, it's like a mega grid of a suburb that goes on like 50 miles this way and about 40 miles on the other axis. And that's all it is. There's no forests. There's no fucking mountain range. Everything's outside the city.
Outside the city, yeah. Now
there is a 45 by like 50 mile block.
We live in a basin, like a desert. Yeah.
That is just, it's like suburb after suburb in fucking like grid formation. And I was trying to explain that, and it was like, he was like, I just
foreign
gotta
land.
See it. He was like, I just got to see it. And because I was thinking about my bus trip the other day when you were talking about the bus, and I had a really positive experience on this private run city bus thing, you know. I had a pretty good experience. I had one moment of like fear and anxiety when a young man got a little too close to me at the corner where we were waiting to cross the street, and he gave me some very sketch eye contact. And he was just a sketch looking character, like no shirt, fucking like clothes falling off of him. He's holding a Black and Mild or like a blunt. I can't tell if it was like a backwoods or whatnot, but he just locked on with me and was real close to me. And it wasn't like a moment where I had to be like, hey buddy, I just saw him, acknowledged he existed, looked the other way, went about my day. Yeah. But I did have that moment of like, I might have to show this guy my nuts. I might have to show him that I contain a pair of man nuts.
That was weird. I interpreted that statement way differently than you meant it.
Blue Mountain State, though, it works on both levels.
It's true.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that, John?
No.
Like if you want to get out of a fight, you just pull your nuts out.
I might have had to physically pull my nuts out to scare this man away.
Dick out right now.
If he showed me a knife, if he showed me a knife or a gun, I'd be like, that's my dick. That's my only weapon I'd have.
I'm butt naked. You're gonna stop butt naked, man?
Everybody can see me. I'm naked. Everybody's looking.
I'm drawing a lot of attention to this situation.
But I really enjoyed my bus riding experience. It was my first time since Iraq, since Baghdad, that I've been on a public bus like that or a transport bus.
Oh, you hadn't been on the bus since being
I had not. So I really enjoyed that experience, and it made me think a lot about expanding that public transportation option to the rest of America. Yeah, because I don't like that I have to pay Frontier Airlines to fly across the country. I mean, it's fine, comparable rates, whatever. I just feel like the public option, I look at it like fast food, you know? We can reimagine fast food and reimagine the way that we interact with our food and do it in a cheap, publicly funded way.
That's the interesting thing is I don't want to keep going on, but you think it's going to be cheap and quality.
Well, see, this is the thing, though. The reason why for yourself and your family, cooking and preparing your own meals of healthy foods is better. Especially if you do a total cost analysis, which includes the health costs that you'll have to pay when you're older, when all of the bullshit that you ate catches up with you. But it's cheaper to do it if you prepare it for yourself. But it can be even cheaper if you do it in bulk. So if you can buy, organic potatoes for 99 cents a pound at the grocery store, you can buy them for 10 cents a pound straight from the dude who grows it. And if you're buying enough for like a public works thing, now you've got all these organic potatoes that you can use in these healthy meals, and then just serve it at the cafeteria.
Bread lines. It's just communist bread lines.
I just
no
meant
big deal.
in general, like as like almost a rule of economics. Like quality decreases with price. So it's like you said, like I don't, and even in his world, any world, I don't imagine this base level public work being any better than Spirit or Frontier. Like that was actually going to be one of my counter arguments. I'm like, we already got Spirit. Like, what do we need this other government ran Spirit for?
I would say one of my main reasons why I like a lot of the public options in a lot of these areas is that I feel like a public option is the least likely to infringe upon my natural rights that I will have in my constitution or in my system, rather than leave it up to whoever.
Okay.
I will have my rights. Okay. I will have enumerated on a piece of paper or on a document. I have a certain kind of natural rights. That's kind of why I touched on John Locke. Is not so much that we have a natural order to our world, but rather that we have the personal freedoms and natural rights that they said God gave us, that I think we are just born with in this system.
Right. That's interesting. I would say that I don't know, like, I don't feel like it's any worse or better for corporations or governments.
Nah, the government infringes on my rights as much as a corporation does, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But this is kind of like the idea that, like, the government,
but if it was run properly,
if we had just are on the radio wavelengths, right? Like the public radio wavelength, like we could say we have freedom of speech, we can say whatever we want. But if we're on a Viacom channel or a YouTube, they could censor us.
I feel you.
So it's like that idea spread out into some of these other systems.
Like
maybe
just they can't not refuse. Yeah. So like it's just like a Frontier, like even if Frontier wanted to have a vaccine mandate or whatever, and hypothetically speaking, this government system decided like that's against your rights for like medical freedoms
Supreme
or whatever.
Court rules or something.
And then the public, then you would still be able to fly though. Because in our situation now, if all the airlines decide you need a vaccine, if you don't have a vaccine, you're not flying nowhere.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's true. I feel you on that.
Yeah.
I just think that even if the airline one ultimately is not going to work, like even if that's like a failed part of this system, I think there's enough pieces of this public works idea that overall it would be a net positive to the American society.
It's mostly food for me.
The food's the big one because it's about the composition of the actual food. Yeah. If you're helping local farmers
and just access to it too.
Yeah.
The fact that we just have people, like you said, the fact that we now feed all of us on 1% farming when we used to do it on 90% farming, like that shows you that we've gotten pretty goddamn good at farming.
Absolutely. No. What it shows is we figured out how to produce all that shit in a laboratory that we used to farm.
Don't give a fuck. Fine. There's a quantity.
You're better at farming, whether you farm in a lab or in a field.
Like you're right. Like we can go up and down about genetically modified and healthy and all that stuff. I don't give a fuck. Right. What I'm talking about is there's people out here who are starving to death. And we have that level of food production capabilities.
Yeah.
So it's like, I would love to see the quality of the options come up. I would love there to just be options. Like,
but you know why?
You should not have to, especially in America, you should not have to starve. You just shouldn't.
Agreed.
But do you know why there's like food deserts in areas where it's hard to get to a grocery store if you don't have a car? Because they don't design cities with the idea of people not owning cars.
Pedestrian Dignity. Look that up. I think it's a TikTok. Check out Pedestrian Dignity.
Oh, I know all about it.
Yeah.
Cities are built inherently kind of subjugating people who don't have cars a lot of times, because unless you live in the downtown area, which normally aren't thought of that way because they're old as fuck and everybody was close, then you get into a suburb. Suburbs aren't walkable. You're not going to walk around a suburb unless you're just getting like some exercise, but you're not going to walk to work from a suburb. That's surely not happening. So it's like we have to these things can become problems from areas that we didn't even think about. Like the transportation is now affecting the food because you just never thought about, well, what are people that live in low income areas that are far away from good grocery stores going to do for their food?
Get a car, buddy.
Well, they got McDonald's near them, right?
Yeah, just get a
All right,
car.
we'll just make it to where their Snap gives them McDonald's. That's fine. And
This
it's
is
like, well, what the fuck, dude? That's not a solution at all, really.
You bring me to a great example. In my home city of like 40, 50,000 people, there is a main strip, a main road, 4-6 lanes that goes to the highway and back where all of our commerce is kind of centered on.
Mm-hmm.
We have an old school downtown, but we have Highway 150, which is the strip. It's where everybody is, where every job I ever had was on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
There's not a fucking sidewalk on either side of that main road to be seen across the whole fucking from the railroad track where it kind of ends or turns into a country road all the way to the lake, brother. Not a fucking side. There's a couple built into the strip malls.
Mm-hmm.
But they end and then you're just in somebody's front lawn or a business's grass or just crossing an unprotected driveway or a bypass or whatever. Not a single fucking, not just lack of sidewalks, not a protected crosswalk along that whole strip.
6 lanes.
Where every fucking business is. Not a single protected. They got protected green arrows for your cars.
Yep.
Oh, I got plenty of those. And they might have the lines on that in those breaks where you're supposed to walk, but there's no fucking little walk sign. There's no little button.
They're not
none of that.
to walking.
None of that. There's like 2
But
in
is
our
it
old
just
downtown,
because, like,
and that's it.
Maybe there's not a lot of people who want to walk though.
Think about it. If you don't own a car and you want to work in Mooresville and you have to walk to work, I can't tell you how many people I see walking in the grass on the side of this 6-lane highway.
Costa Rica was like that. When we went to Costa Rica, dudes were just walking up and down this highway. And like, you know, we're coming out of the city, so we're living like a couple miles outside the city, and so we'd have to drive 20 minutes outside the city. And I would just see these people walking on this like highway that we've been on now for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes driving, and there's nothing. So I'm like, damn, dude, you're just hiking it probably 5 miles.
Every day I was home, and keep in mind, it was temperate this year, but this was Christmas time. So, you know, sometimes it's going to be fucking 2 inches of snow on the ground. Every single day I was out and about when I was home over the Christmas break, I saw someone walking to work. I'd say out of all those people I saw, the majority of them were fast food workers. So low income, you know, lack of car, just trying to get an entry-level job or trying to make my ends meet. And I have to walk. And it's dangerous because I've walked that highway once or twice. It ain't fucking fun, bro. I had to walk home when my car broke down one time from like the Walmart all the way to like Bucko's. Yeah. And that's almost the whole stretch on one side of like the major I-77. And I was in grass and crossing entrances to businesses the whole time. No sidewalks, no crossing.
That's why I actually would like to see your system implemented for free. You know, like I think it should be that way.
Yeah, because we didn't have a bus system in my little town.
Right.
Or if we did, it certainly was not fucking accessible because I didn't see any bus stops.
Because making the city more walkable, like I think if you ask those people that are walking, you're like, would you rather have a free bus or, you know, crosswalks? They would be like, yo, like just give me the bus. Like I'm not trying to walk. I just have to
that's
walk,
I was pointing out that
I would say, give me both, please.
can start from very long before the actual issue comes up. Like it started in the city planning phase. And why is that where it started? Well, because there was no city planning. Nobody planned this entire city. They just been building on top of it over and over again.
How are they going to get to all these businesses? Well, they better have a car.
You better get a car.
Better get a car. You know, don't listen to Ted Kaczynski, okay? Get a car.
Would it be interesting when we switch to the next form of transportation? You know, you better teleport. You better start teleporting.
Yeah, if you're not going to
teleport, well,
you're not going to be able to get fresh produce.
You're just not getting to Mars. Sorry.
Would be my preferred option if I'm being like realistic. I've always wished that we could teleport. But if I'm being like, what would be most fun? Those Futurama air tubes would be badass.
Yeah.
Where you just... It sucks you into this tube and it
I would want to be able to, just kind of slide into like a magnetically levitated coffin that just like zings me across
Minority
town.
Report.
Yeah.
The Minority Report had the best vision of it for me, where it even flies all the way up your building and you can just get out into your apartment and your car just magnetically hangs on the side of your building. Oh,
Yep.
My dad hit me with this idea like years ago, though. He was like genius with that. He was like, magnetic highways. He was like, you know, all in like a magnetic rail system where it's all computer controlled, every car is. And so you like put your And this is something we can implement now. It's like not even like every road. He was like saying like you'd roll up onto it like a tollway or something, and it would like connect to your magnet parts underneath your car and just take over and like zip, and everybody gets to zip at like fucking 200 miles an hour in your car. Because anyways,
in the current system that currently exists, some private company is going to build that, toll that, and line their pockets with
charge you a lot. For
that's the thing I noticed back home.
That's gonna be a prime option. It's definitely not gonna roll that out to the masses.
It's like some amount of the funding was provided by like state and local government for this highway extension that is run by a private company, and some amount of the money that's made off it goes back to the public, but the majority of the money that's made and the majority of the money spent to build it were private and is all privatized. And I just thought that was strange. Like I was like trying to tell my mom, like, yeah, they have HOV lanes in California that they enforce. And I'm sure that by enforcing those HOV lanes, they probably make enough money to like help put into the roads. You don't need, like, it seemed like a superfluous, ridiculous option to just have 2 lanes that you just got to pay for those lanes all the time, every day, if you want to avoid traffic. You can't use them if you have more than one person. You can't use them at, nope, you got to pay $3.35.
You also have to think about it, like all the services that you could use, you know, like the government is already super bloated with paper pushers and bureaucrats and stuff. Now we're just going to have road dudes sitting around, and like they subcontract out to these people because those people can then do other contracts with other entities other than the government. And so I think it's like an efficiency play, but obviously then the way that they've set it up, now there's like a buddy incentive where like you can hook people up with kickbacks and all that. But I think if I was thinking in a positive light of what they might have been thinking, like, why should we contract the private company out to do this government service?
That's going to retain the profits.
Yeah, it's probably just because they were like, well, look, we don't have it in the budget to create a new department for this or something like that, maybe.
This was a solution to the traffic problem that lines the pockets of the people who made the decision ultimately at the end of the day. And that's how I see it. It might be a different way, but my gut instinct is...
It reduces traffic for people that can pay.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about the benefit of it, because an HOV lane would have a similar benefit, right? It's about where the money goes that the population who use it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a road. Everybody uses our roads. This is a part of our road that Jim gets paid if you use. And Jim doesn't put that back into the public system to build more roads.
But you also said that Jim paid for the road.
Well, he was contracted to build the road. So it's like,
but then also too, like we have why he's doing that, we have a traffic problem in the other 4 lanes. You know,
yes, the public still has a traffic problem that you have to pay to fix, and you got to pay Jim to fix it.
Well, you got to pay somebody to fix it.
Not necessarily if you have an HOV. Like I've seen the 405.
You have to pay for those. Like if you're adding a lane to a highway, somebody has to build that lane.
No, I understand that.
Works.
But exactly, it would not be Jim's public transportation service that then Jim is going to line his pocket. It would be the state of North Carolina getting some.
It would be the USRS, the United States Road Service.
Correct. I would be behind if you presented me the ISRS or USR, whatever the fuck it's called.
USRS, and then there'd be the USFS, which would be the United States Food Service, and I fuck with it as long as you get somebody to run it who's not running the USPS.
Correct. Well, that's the part of that's where I want to end this is Neo-Internetalism. We're in a new era. If we designed the post office from the ground up today, it would probably work a lot more efficiently because of all the information we have, because of all the data we have, because of all the fact that like if I want to have the smartest person in Berlin talk to the smartest person in Albany, New York about building road systems, now I can just put them in a Zoom call. You know what I'm saying? I can they can just be talking to each other instantly. Where if this was 1787, it'd be like, well, I got to take a train all the way to Poland, and I got to get on a ship through the Mediterranean. You know what I mean? Like it's a completely different fucking world where we are not able to communicate as efficiently as we can today. So I want to leave my Neo-Internetalism talk with that. The information that we have access to today, the ability to communicate at instant speed, is what we need to apply to our government instead of these antiquated fucking pen and paper, quill and ink bullshit that we're currently dealing with.
Couldn't agree more.
Burn the Declaration of Independence. Burn the Constitution.
Kill all the mailmen. We will start over.
We will eradicate the Postal Service like the rats they are. And then we
Just
will build
like
it
we did in the kulaks.
So yeah, this has
I
been...
want y'all to remember, though, I want to say this out loud. Offline, I warn against this joke. I hate this joke.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
I hate this joke.
We're going to end this
Please
episode of
do
3
not
Averagely
throw
Intelligent Communists.
Overthrow the United States
Yeah.
government and say, oh, they said on the TAID3I podcast that this would be a good idea.
Yeah, this is all happening in Minecraft. This is satire.
No, but hey, whatever. Y'all do you. Take the ideas
Hey,
for what they are.
so I take all
They're
of your...
dangerous.
I love all your part 1 ideas.
Thanks, man.
I find very few flaws in them.
Appreciate it.
And I like the overall theme. Same with yours. I like your structure more so than I like how you've kind of set up the Constitution aspect of it. You've just created a very good, like a well thought out system. So I think if we combine our powers like Captain Planet,
maybe there's a good idea in here somewhere.
yeah, I think that you shake all 3 of ours around inside of a box for a while, they might coagulate into an idea that makes sense.
Hey, drop y'all's ideas too, man.
Yeah,
like,
let
we'd
us
love
know.
to see what you guys got going on. We're also going to be coming out soon with like a call-in line, so you'll be able to actually throw in some of your own ideas into the show, like actively. So that'd be cool. But
Be looking out for the big changes this year.
yeah, but in the
big
meantime,
changes.
in the comments, where are you at with it? Who's dumb? Who's smart? What would you do differently? We'd love to hear y'all too, because we don't think we have all the ideas.
Right, yeah. We've completely missed whole aspects of society here. So we'd love to hear all your ideas and become even more intelligent.
Yeah, let me add some more things to this box that we're shaking around full of ideas.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, until then, we'll see you guys soon.
Yep.
Peace.
Peace.